Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai.
Adefemi.
Hey. Good morning to viewers. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Now, tensions between the United States and Iran, they do remain fraught, sharply elevated. That's as President Donald Trump has warned Tehran that it must return to the negotiating table on its nuclear program or face military action far worse than previous strikes if a deal isn't reached. Now, Trump did warn a massive armada is moving quickly towards Iran as the U.S. Navy moves a large carrier strike fleet, including the USS Abraham Lincoln, toward the Middle East as a show of force. Now, Iran has rejected negotiations under threat, saying that it will defend itself and treat any attack as an all-out war, insisting the country's armed forces were ready with their fingers on the trigger to immediately and powerfully respond to any aggression by land or sea. Now, Iran continued to deny accusations of seeking to develop nuclear weapons, which is the real underbelly of this issue here. Now, Trump's latest warning follows his promise that Washington will intervene to help those involved in the brutal and unprecedented crackdown on protests in the country earlier this month. You'll remember Trump telling Iranian protesters, help is on the way, before later changing his tune and saying that he had been told on good authority that the execution of demonstrators had stopped. Now, the death toll from those protests was reported by human rights groups as being around 6,000, but sources both in and outside of Iran say that that really isn't a true depiction of the death toll and say that it could be as high as 30,000. Now, doctors have been arrested for treating protesters and patients have been dragged from hospital beds into detention. So very serious things happening over in Iran. But let's move on to South Korea, where South Korea's former First Lady, Kim Kyung-hee, has been sentenced to 20 months in prison, and that's after a Seoul court found her guilty of bribery and corruption for accepting luxury gifts in exchange for political favors. Now, the court ruled that Kim, the wife of the ousted ex-president Yoon Suk-yeol, abused her position for personal gain, including accepting items like a Chanel bag and a diamond necklace. So essentially, she's accused of accepting a Chanel handbag and a diamond necklace. And essentially, these were linked to the Unification Church. Now, she was cleared of some charges due to lack of evidence, but the conviction underscores ongoing legal reckoning with South Korea's political elite. Kim and her husband have both been jailed as the country continues to confront political scandal and accountability at the highest level. Now, to some developments in this case involving Alex Peretti, who we remember is the 37-year-old Minneapolis nurse who was fatally shot by federal immigration agents last week. Now, 2 U.S. Customs and Border Protections agents involved in that incident have been placed on administrative leave as part of the standard investigation. However, there has been newly released footage from 11 days before the fatal shooting. And in that video, which is playing behind me on your screens, it does show Peretti in an earlier confrontation with federal agents during a protest. Now, the video appears to show him spitting at agents and kicking the taillight of a federal vehicle before being tackled to the ground by those officers. Now, the video does show what appears to be a gun on Peretti's waistband, but at no point do the video show him reach for that gun. Now, officials are reviewing all video evidence as public scrutiny intensifies over the aggressive tactics being used in Minneapolis. Peretti's family and supporters say that the earlier altercation, which we're seeing now, does not justify the subsequent shooting, and that the case has sparked widespread debate over law enforcement conduct. We'll see what happens there. And now, still staying in the United States, rapper Nicki Minaj. She has made headlines once again in Washington, D.C. after publicly throwing her support behind U.S. President Donald Trump at a government event promoting Trump accounts. It's a savings initiative for children, so that's why she was there. So Minaj took the stage with Trump, calling herself his #1 fan and saying criticism of the president only strengthens her support for him. She also pledged hundreds of thousands of dollars toward Trump accounts program and shared a photo of so-called Trump gold card, essentially fueling speculations and online debates about her political alignment, whether she's a Republican or not. But as we heard her say, that she is Donald Trump's #1 fan. We'll get into that discussion a bit later, but first let's take a look at our newspaper headlines from across Nigeria. As ever, we begin with the front page of this day. And this day reports that the chairman of the Nigerian Revenue Service, Dr. Sakis Adedeji, has said that there is currently no legal framework to tax Nigeria's informal economy. That's the lead story. He's stressing that operators must first be formalized before they can be taxed. He also assured that the new tax laws are not designed to burden poor Nigerians, noting that essential items are VAT exempt. Still staying with this day, there are reports that renowned, just at the top there, industrialist and Lagos royal figure, Otumba Adekunle Ojora, has died at the age of 93. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did describe his passing as a major loss to Nigeria, praising his distinguished life of service across business, public service and traditional institutions, while the family have announced his burial in Lagos according to Islamic rites. Let's move on to the Daily Independent. The Daily Independent this morning reports that Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke, just at the top here, has accused the Minister of the Blue Economy, Boyega Oyetola, of engineering the local government crisis in his state, insisting that APC Council Chairman's tenure expired in 2025 and cannot be extended by law. He said that the chairman was sacked by court rulings, and he continues to accuse Oyetola of blocking council funds and illegally influencing local government finances, and urged President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to call the minister to order, warning that all those involved in the mismanagement of council funds will be held accountable. Take a look at the Daily Trust this morning. The Daily Trust does report that delays in the passing of the Electoral Amendment Bill 2025 are raising concerns ahead of the 2027 elections. So you have the House of Representatives. They've passed the bill. The Senate has deferred its review for further scrutiny. Civil society groups are warning that the delay could disrupt INEC's preparations and undermine public confidence, while senior lawyers stress the need to complete amendments before election timetables are issued. INEC, however, says that the existing Electoral Act of 2022 still allows sufficient time for preparations. We'll see. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph this morning. The New Telegraph this morning has a whole range of stories, but what we're looking at is the fact that the Senate has opted for a closed-door session to review the United States airstrikes on terrorist hideouts in Sokoto back in December, citing national security concerns. Now, the senator who brought this about, Senator Abdul Ningi of the PDP, representing Bauchi State, questioned the operation, saying that the National Assembly was not consulted. The Senate President, however, Godswill Akpabio, ruled that security matters should not be discussed publicly, insisting that such issues are not for the open market. Let's take a look at The Punch. The Punch has, in its lead story and definitely on its picture story, these reports of Lagos police using tear gas and making arrests to disperse residents and crowds protesting home demolitions in Ikeja, prompting a condemnation from human rights groups and activists. Now, protesters demanded relocation and compensation, while authorities cited blocked roads and public safety for their grievances. Now, 2 individuals were arrested, at least 2 were arrested, and human rights advocates have called for the crackdown. They've called the crackdown of this protest a violation of constitutional rights to assemble. Now, the Daily Mail of the United Kingdom leads on this countdown to conflagration with what we're seeing with Donald Trump and that is Ayatollah of Iran there. So a lot of international papers have been picking up this story, a lot of British papers. Essentially, they've been exchanging threats of military actions back and forth. We'll see what happens there. And then we've got the Daily Express this morning, and you've got Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, saying that the defectors are drama queens. That's what she's called them. Those people who've left the Conservative Party to join the Reform UK are not serious people. That's what Kemi Badenoch says, and that's what the Daily Express has led with this morning. So those are your newspaper headlines, annual brief. Love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so, I mean, let's talk about America and Trump saying he's going to get an Armada in. Actually, I think the BBC confirmed that they actually have geosat images of Armadas actually moving to that area in around the shores of Iran. But the question we should ask this morning is, Femi, who took America out of the JCPOA?
Wow.
Donald Trump himself. So you want a new nuclear deal. Look at the hypocrisy of America, Trump, not America, because all of this is just Trump. You removed America from the JCPOA. You brought back sanctions on Iran. Other nations in the JCPOA pulled out. Then many years down the line, because you have the oomph from striking Iran last year, you're now saying, come and negotiate a new deal, or else I will unleash the Armada on you. But you pulled out of the agreement first. Agreements that was negotiated by the former Democratic government and that was leading to a party peace. You disrupted everything. Then let me now further the hypocrisy. Do you know, as we speak today, that Russia has put nuclear weapons on Belarusian soil? Do you know? No. So Belarus harbors nuclear weapons. But I dare Trump to go after Belarus. He will not do that because there's Russia. They're backing them up. Israel has neither confirmed nor denied, but the reports say Israel has nuclear weapons. But Israel is never the problem. I am not saying I support the government of the Ayatollahs. I condemn what they are doing in Iran. In fact, I was seeing a very terrible, documentary on Channel 4 News yesterday night about 8 p.m. where they were saying that the situation is so gory in Iran that protesters, their, life support machine, are being removed by Iranian Revolutionary Guards.
Yes,
they are being killed.
Being taken into custody.
They are being killed. In fact, those that were taken into custody are lucky. They are being killed on their hospital beds. And they haven't said the number is about 30 to 60,000 people that have been killed. And these are the people Trump says he was going to save. So I do not support that in any way, shape, or form. Let me extend that hypocrisy to you. I'm sure you've heard about the new song by the boss himself, about what is happening on the streets of Minneapolis in America, Bruce Springsteen. Now they are releasing this video. At first, Kristi Noem came out to say that, these are domestic terrorists. But all of a sudden, they are giving administrative leave to these two people. So are they accepting that that happened? Now, they've released this video you are showing that 11 days before.
Yes.
So the question I'd like to ask those that released this video, because the attempt now by the right is to be able to blackmail Pretty. So those that released this video, I would like to ask them just one question. After Pretty hit the car and the ICE officers came out, why didn't they kill him on the spot 11 days ago? And for them trying to exonerate the ICE officer that did the job, accusing Pretty of the misdemeanor, why didn't other ICE officers, there were more than 3 or 4 ICE officers that was there. I think it was about 1 or 2 of them that shot about the 10 bullets. Why did the other ICE officers shoot? So you see, all this attempt by the right is not working. It's not working.
All right, okay. So even if it's not working, in terms of Donald Trump's right move in some quarters, some people like Nicki Minaj are saying that they love him. He's her favorite president. Any American citizen or resident has a right to choose where they align with. And we've seen in the past celebrity endorsements. However, what I want to look at and what she might want to consider is how this public endorsement and demonstration and display of love would affect her music career. I say this because if you look at the history of other celebrities who have endorsed a controversial figure, it has had impacts, sometimes considerable impact on their careers. The Chicks, remember, in 2003, with their support or condemnation of George W. Bush II and their criticism of the war, cost them significantly in their career. Yes. We have seen Kanye West lose endorsements based on his political stance. We have seen Hollywood actors talk about the fact that because they are conservatives or they support the conservative government, have lost movie opportunities, especially the smaller ones like Stacey Dash and others. So it might very well have an impact on her career. Is that worth it? Despite the fact that, like I mentioned earlier on, I put the caveat there that she has a right to support whomever she wants to support based on whatever reason she wants to support the person. Now, going to the sentencing of the former First Lady of South Korea, this is an example of countries where accountability in strong institutions, the rule of law works. And I say this because, we talked about corruption cases around the world. Only recently, we're talking about a corruption case against our very own former Minister of Petroleum, Diezani Alice Madueke in the United Kingdom. Yes. Very similar charges around inducements for favors and contracts based on gifts. In this case, in her case, it was that is the former South Korean, First Lady. It was up to hundreds of thousands of dollars of bribes and inducements paid to her, Chanel bags, Dior bags, and so her penchant for the finer things in life have now cost her significantly. I think the parts to learn from this is, number one, the trial was handled and held in her own country by courts in the country. It means that there are no sacred cows. Even her husband has now been sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. Something to learn about that. Number two is that she herself accepted wrongdoing. So there's a sense of responsibility and accountability and shame when it comes to corruption like this. And so these are some of the lessons that we can learn from this, that rule of law does work where there are strong institutions and where the people have strong laws to back and to speak against corruption. Hopefully we can learn some lessons from there.
Okay, on South Korea, I'll just refer to a book titled Culture Matters, Cornel West. Yeah. Now, culture makes the difference in terms of how organizations are different from the others and how countries' systems are different or institutions, how they differ. Now, look at the wife of former President Yoon in South Korea being sentenced to 20 months in jail because of a diamond neck chain and also Coco Chanel bags, all of it about 80 million won, just about $56,000. In some other countries, that would not be an offense. In fact, that will even be very small gifts to collect, either from the...
countries like that? Which countries do that?
In Nigeria now.
Really?
Either from the Unification Church or from any other organization. And now, for the first time in the history of South Korea, you have both wife and husband being sentenced to jail terms. President Yoon has been slammed with a 5-year jail term, and now the wife is also going to, jail. That is the first time you will have that in South Korea. However, Mrs. Kim, I think her name is Kim, she has been asked to pay back about 12.5 million won out of what she received. So there are lessons to be learned from that particular example. I think that's the pith of the matter. As for the situation in Minnesota, before now, President Donald Trump has said he was going to de-escalate Operation Metro Surge. But he has not been very sincere in that regard. He has been arguing with the governor and also with the mayor and, criticisms across the aisle, bipartisan criticism of the ICE and also particularly of Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. But Trump doesn't seem to care. And the important thing is not just about following protocol, that the two officials who fired the shots and killed Pretty will be suspended, will go on compulsory leave. They did the same thing with the official that killed Rene Good on the 7th of January. What the governor of Minnesota is asking for is that the ICE officials, the border patrol officials who have turned themselves into Trump's militia in the state of Minnesota should be withdrawn, so that the people of Minnesota can have peace. Only the other day, Ilhan Omar rep, was sprayed with, some acrid substance. Now the man has now been charged second-degree assault. But what Trump should do is to suspend Operation Metro Surge. Finally, as for Iran and the U.S. Now, the U.S., in fact, helped the Iranians to set up their nuclear research program.
Yes.
When the Pahlavi dynasty was in power, it was after the Iranian Revolution that the United States now move to the other side. And what moral authority does the United States have to say that the Iranians cannot have nuclear power when others have it? That's the hypocrisy at the heart of international relations. Now we have tension in that region of the world with, the Iranians saying they too will fight back, whatever happens. Well, I hope they have that capacity. After all, they were attacked in June last year, and they also went into the 12-day war, and they held the short end of the stick.